Pre-running and pre-dropping pallets, two insanely strong tactics that are commonly used by survivors in modern Dead by Daylight. While pre-running has always sort of been around due to the prevalence of exhaustion perks like Sprint Burst, pre-dropping pallets was never needed in the early days of DBD. In fact, there were so many pallets to utilize that you could just throw down every pallet without any efficiency in looping and still have enough resources left over to be fairly safe, unless you were on Shelter Woods, one of the only killer-sided maps. In addition to this, there were fewer anti-loop killers back then, so pre-dropping pallets was not a necessary strategy when in chase. However, as more and more killers have been released, strong anti-loop powers have become a more frequent sight. As a result, sometimes the correct play in modern DBD, and possibly the only one in certain situations, is to pre-run and or pre-drop pallets. Trying to efficiently loop pallets against some killers who have such a strong anti-loop is a daring and fun challenge, but it's a challenge that often leads to overall shorter chases and less escapes. For example, looping pallets against a trapper is an entirely different experience from looping pallets against a clown, xenomorph, or blight. A survivor can certainly try looping as efficiently as possible against these kinds of killers, but assuming the killer player knows what they're actually doing, you won't get very far in a chase. Unfortunately, pre-running and pre-dropping pallets is an even stronger strategy against killers like the Trapper, who don't have much, if any, anti-loop capabilities. These same strategies that were originally ignited out of desperation when facing strong anti-loop killer powers have gradually infiltrated chases against almost every other killer. And while it's certainly not as fun or challenging to just pre-run and pre-drop pallets against killers like the Trapper, if it's a strategy that can help guarantee a win, then it will probably be relied on at some point during a match. Personally speaking, I try my best to loot pallets as efficiently as possible against most killers, as it feels a lot more rewarding and challenging. But pre-running and pre-dropping end up becoming a necessity, due to either the killer's power or because the match will be over quickly if a more successful chase is not accomplished. And sometimes safe chases are the more successful chases. All of this brings me to the PTB for patch 9.5. In this PTB, a new survivor perk called 5 Moves Ahead has been introduced. When using this perk while you are in the killer's terror radius or being chased by the killer, you are able to see the auras of the 5 closest pallets and windows. But most importantly, this perk also grants a survivor the ability to drop pallets 50% faster while in the terror radius or while being chased. This is a new effect for survivors, but it's one that I'm a little surprised to see be introduced. On one hand, it was only a matter of time until a new perk effect like this would be introduced. But on the other hand, this is potentially a very scary step towards making pre-running and pre-dropping even stronger. Having the ability to drop pallets 50% faster is something to be feared. There's a myriad of different talking points as to why speeding up the ability to drop pallets is a potentially huge problem, but I want to focus mostly on the current state of pallets and the overall survivor looping efficiency that exists today. When it comes to pallets, the effects of the pallet density update and its various adjustments are still being felt. The overall pallet count is not the healthiest spot on several maps, with some maps possibly being safer than they were prior to the original pallet density update. One would think that with pallets being in a constant state of disarray, adding a new perk that speeds up any kind of pallet looping is adding fuel to the fire. It's probable that the pallet density update was planned after this perk was created, and thus the ramifications of the pallet density changes were never anticipated to be as strong as they were. But even without the pallet density update, any new component to pallets and how they function should be looked over with immense care, otherwise things can quickly get out of shape. The larger problem that 5 Moves Ahead has created is that it's adding a new layer to the overall speed and efficiency that survivors have access to when in chase, and also when not technically in a chase. Resilience has always been a solid perk choice, and one that I find fairly balanced all things considered, but it does allow for a slight boost and faster vaulting that can sometimes make the difference between a hit connecting or not. Finesse is another recent example of providing survivors more efficiency when looping, as it allows for 20% faster vaults when healthy, albeit on a cooldown. And while 5 Moves Ahead does have a 20-second cooldown, the benefit that faster pallet dropping can provide a survivor make it so that the perk itself can likely be used multiple times within one chase, all of which compounds into a longer overall chase. And this is before factoring in any exhaustion perks that can provide more distance when in chase or when pre-running. Ultimately, the largest power that 5 Moves Ahead provides is a faster start when pre-dropping pallets. If this perk is used while actively at a loop with a killer, it's an overall solid perk, but the boost this perk provides when pre-dropping a pallet against a killer with a standard or larger tear radius is very strong, as survivors can now gain even more distance before even officially starting a chase. On top of everything else, this perk arguably outclasses windows of opportunity, which is extremely interesting given how high the pick rate is for that perk. So when you combine everything together, all of this creates the potential for a very efficient pre-dropping and looping build, and if a 50% speed up to the pallet dropping action may not sound like a lot, I think of 5 moves ahead as the survivor equivalent of enduring for killers. A survivor's goal is to drop a pallet down as quickly as possible and keep moving, while a killer's goal is to avoid the pallet stun and quickly determine the fastest route to catching the survivor. Enduring offers a way to reduce the pallet stun duration, while 5 moves ahead offers a way to speed up the pallet dropping action. In short, both perks offer a way to improve efficiency in a chase, specifically when interacting with a pallet. So if someone views Enduring as a strong or solid perk, then 5 moves ahead is essentially on the same level. With all that being said though, 5 moves ahead should probably be nerfed to some degree before it goes to live servers, not only because I find this perk mildly unhealthy for the game, but also because this perk will only supplement one of the strongest and boring looping strategies. One of the most frustrating and unfortunate side effects with the increase in killers with very strong anti-loop powers is the acceleration of less interactive gameplay rising to the top. In other words, dull and tedious counterplay that is required to stay competitive. However, pre-running and pre-dropping pallets is a strategy that won't go away even if the killers with the strongest anti-loop powers were to be removed today. The most safe and guaranteed path to victory, even against the weakest killers, is to pre-run and pre-drop. And without overhauls to a variety of gameplay elements and killers, it will always be the safest strategy and approach to chases. And I mean seriously, once the bell has been rung, it can't be undone. Nevertheless, while adding a perk like 5 moves ahead certainly nourishes the pre-running and pre-dropping problem, it also exposes it to more sunlight. So in turn, there's always a chance that the addition of this perk could lead to a more positive change in reducing the strength of pre-running and pre-dropping. Although that would require a complete understanding of why pre-running and pre-dropping are often utilized by survivors. And based on how previous attempts at fixing things like tunneling and slugging have gone, I don't really have much faith in the devs to properly address the root causes of pre-running and pre-dropping. One can really hope that they would, but that's up to you if you want to hope that much. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.